All right, well, welcome everyone to the March 8th, 2022 edition of SIG Node. We'll kick off our meetings as we usually do here. Sergey, do you want to give an update on where we are with overall velocity for the past week?
Yeah, this week was very slow. We still fighting some bugs. I think one of them is on agenda today. And bugs creates many PRs, so we're growing on PRs. Some of them are work in progress, so I'm not that concerned about it. We're merging on a regular pace, and some of PRs was closed. I looked through all of them. Nothing is getting lost as rotten or anything like that, so nothing needs saving. So very good work, everybody. Thank you for keeping the pace. And as I said, there are many work in progress PRs, and the PRs needed review. So if you have time, look at ones that needs review.
All right, very cool. And then I guess that can lead into our next topic, which is where we are on the release and what we think is relatively on track or not. I saw you had a list of items there. I don't know if you want to give any highlights on each, or if folks on the call are concerned that their item's not there. Maybe we can talk through that. Yeah,
I think the best would be to go through the list and see where the item is. I don't know status for all of them. I try to check, but I don't want to misrepresent anything. So first, dynamic kubelet config is done. PR is merged. There is no dynamic kubelet config in kubelet any longer. Next one is credential provider. I saw the PR that is there, but I think KEP is calling for more work, specifically for end-to-end testing, and I don't think this is being worked on by anybody. Is anybody who worked on that PR on the call? So last release, we cut it out of release because of lack of activity. I wonder whether we need to do the same this release, because similarly, nobody working on that. Like Aditi was working on that, but then she stopped. And Andrew, I'm not sure how active Andrew is right now.
Yeah, I had worked with Andrew most on this in the past, so I don't know. I'll ping him and see if he has cycles or not. But yeah, I guess it's the continuing barrier to fixing the out-of-tree cloud provider migration.
So do we need to mark it as soft cut, or like unless something will be done really quickly?
Yeah, you can mark it as that, and then I'll follow up with Andrew.
Docker shim removal done. We still have few pre-submits on Docker shim, but Matthias is working on with pre-submit owners. It's like SIG Windows, SIG storage to remove those. CAdvisor, CRI full stats. Anybody on the call can represent us?
Yeah, I can represent this. I'm not sure if Peter's on the call. We chatted about this one. It's kind of in progress. I think the issue is we're thinking to make it beta, but to make it beta, we kind of need to turn on the feature gate by default, and I don't think we're ready to do that fully because some of the pieces of the KEP, like the alternative metrics in the CRI, are not fully implemented yet, like a new Prometheus endpoint. So we might track this one as alpha for now and kind of see how it goes, because we aren't really fully ready to turn on the feature gate. So we had some offline discussion about that one. We'll probably update the KEP to reflect the latest status there.
Okay, I will fix the comment later. Thank you for update. Swap, I think I talked to Ilana before she went on vacation. I talked to other people who was interested in doing that work. So it seems that swap is not happening this release because of lack of contributions. Any concerns? Well, then let's move on. I will comment on the cap to cut it from release. Priority class value-based critical shutdown. David, is it still you?
Yes, so this one, I believe, in Renal tracking, I believe the cap has been merged, and I believe I've saw the implementation and I reviewed it. I think it just needed some approvals. So
Yeah, it's on my list. I'll get to it this week.
cool. Thanks, Renal.
So the only thing left is to approve the PR and it's ready for beta, right?
Yeah, it's targeting beta. Yep.
Okay, so we're keeping it in this release. And last one, gRPC probes. I sent a PR for that. Yeah, just waiting for API review. I would suggest it's past soft deadline, but I would suggest to keep it anyway. It's relatively straightforward cap. If no objections, and
yeah, I think sounds good. It's small enough. I can make a pass.
Okay. And those PRs can be work in progress. Pod overhead is a small PR. It's due. I think we can keep it. In place vertical scaling. I think Vinyak commented here. He's not on the call, but he says that he has some other priorities, but he is actually working on. He will start working on Derek's comments after coming Friday. So there is still time to 29th. So I think we can keep it as is. Container checkpoint. I saw PRs yesterday.
I started reviewing it today, Sergey, and I think Sasha is also going to help me review it. Yeah.
Perfect. And image pool secrets.
Mike, you want to talk about it? So we started reviewing it, and there were auth reviewed it, and there were some concerns that we are not addressing checkpointing that information on this. So maybe we can have a quick discussion. Mike, if you want to just give a status.
Yeah, sure. It's a complicated subject, so probably would be an offline call to go into details, but suffice it to say there was we split the feature up into 2 phases, and the second phase was going to include persisting the information. Unfortunately, to persist the information, we need some changes probably in the container runtime and some other policies within Kubernetes for image pulling, because we can't just persist a list of pods that successfully have pulled images and or the references of those images alongside a hash for the secrets, because that would make the secrets even more vulnerable than we have today. So we'd need a way to checkpoint it in a secure way, probably encrypted or something, and that code is probably going to be exposed, so we need a new policy. We don't usually store checkpoint secure information, right? So just checkpointing it needs a cap basically, and that's why we're splitting it into 2 phases. The current phase only works if you, or at least with respect to the expectation of the current cap in this PR, only works if you require garbage collection to have occurred on the images. If you haven't collected those images, then we won't know, because we're not persisting, whether or not the image was pulled with a secret or was loaded into the container runtime directly, or in the past had been loaded with a secret, because we're not persisting the past information, right? So Liget, correctly pointed out that his bar is doing persistence, and I agree we need to do persistence. We just have to decide: is phase 1 still viable? Are we okay with using an alpha feature gate and telling customers that if they want to test this gate, we suggest that they, in fact, do garbage collection of the images, and not to otherwise not to trust any images that are currently cached.
Mike, could you help me out for a second on that one? So I remember reviewing the cap in the design, and then I'm glad that Jordan caught that topic. If we just proceed with phase 1, what is net new in the kubelet with this capability? That's what I'm confused
right.
on.
Then the net new would be with the images, garbage collected, you can turn this feature gate on and start testing the performance and, making sure that everything works right with actually doing a, in memory persistence for the life of that kubelet, right? Be it a day, be it a week, where you could actually know that you can use pull if not present and not pull always, with a controller to force pull always, which allows us to go on to the next performance problem. What we're trying to do in fast solutions is get down to sub-second pod initialization. And if you have to pull always, you're not gonna find all the issues that we need to fix for fast pods, right? So we were really just trying to make progress, knowing that this isn't the end game with having some, long-running image cache persistence hosted by the container runtimes, or however we end up, solving this problem. We've got a bunch of problems to fix, and we're just trying to make it so we can test fast solutions, right?
I think
That help?
One problem I see is like if we want to somehow figure out whether it was loaded offline in the container runtime, then should the solution move entirely to the container runtime, and kubelet is just passing the information on, okay, use this or cache it, whatever, then like we should pause.
Right, you're right. So right now, the current image pull policies are not image cache policies. What the expectation is that there's some magical image cache policy that's happening on the images based on the pull policy that's been used. And that is not the case, right? So there's some security issues, and thus everybody's just either using never pull or pull always. And there's a lot of security issues even with the never pull, because you don't know where that image came from, right? So I agree, Murnau, the end game might actually be to define the image cache policies in your pod spec, bring that down into the container runtime cache managers, and actually have them implement the image policy instead. So what would happen then is in kubelet, when it does ensured secret pulled images, it would just pass the pod spec with the policy for caching down to the container runtime and the secrets, the current creds that we have. And then what we would do is reply back from the container runtime that, verily, we have pulled the image with this, this particular cred, or a hash of that cred, if you like. And then, and we've handled it. And now you can run your pod because we have all the images, right, pulled. But we're not doing it that way today. It would require a re-architecture.
Yeah, I guess, so thanks, Mike, for describing that. What I was trying to, I feel like there's not a lot of benefit with the current approach absent fixing those things. At least that's what I'm hearing when I hear this out. So like, I'm wondering, like, do we want to just revisit and go back and explore the runtime route? That seems interesting. But I'm wondering, like, the risk if we go ahead with the option as it is now, does that minimize our ability to evolve that feature gate going forward? Will we have to unwind something if we just ultimately think it's going to go into the runtime?
Well,
do you feel an urgency?
It does solve if the images are collected, it does solve the problem of you having to put a controller in there that does pull always. So that is current. We're making the assumption that everybody using Kubernetes today is forcing pull always.
Help me understand that. I'm sorry, and then I don't want to take too much time.
There's a bug. There's a bug in the image policy for pull image if not present, insofar as it presumes that you have access to that image. That is
right. I understand that.
Present.
So you're saying you're still keeping the list of images that required authentication on pool as a checkpointed file on the node. And so you will at least will know that I used a cred to pull that image. I guess what I'm wondering is, do you really know that? Because you don't know if the image
only
was
if they were
actually...
only if you're the only one that pulled the image. If the image got loaded directly into the container runtime, all I know is it's present.
But actually, I guess what I'm wondering is, like, if the kubelet gave you a secret to pull that image, and then the runtime, the image was actually open, like it never needed the secret to pull it. Like, does the kubelet actually know that auth was needed to pull it or not? And then
Yes,
is the
yeah, I have
runtime
that in
one that
the
really knows
I have
that?
that in the code.
Okay.
We check if we do a pull without without creds, we get a reference back that says it was pulled without creds, and I remove or delete, if you will, the fact that you need a cred now, or you needed a cred before, but now you don't need a cred. I actually store that.
So then, like, conceptually, like, the present feature as it is today would be useful in systems who might wipe their image FS on reboot.
Yes, if you wipe it, then it's good the way it's set.
All right, well, maybe that's
in other words,
valuable
which
still,
is your
maybe.
typical cloud environment, right? You create a VM, it is wiped. Usually when you're wiping kubelet, you're wiping the node, you're starting it up over again. In that case, it has value.
Okay.
So I shouldn't have made, I didn't mean to say it's only a performance thing. Yeah, it's the value in that case in the wiping, and it's also the value, for when you're trying to, if we're using this as an evaluation set of code. But Mernal's right. Maybe the right answer here is just to start over with a new set of policies and implement the policy in a different place instead of the image GC manager in kubelet. We could handle that down in the container runtimes. Albeit that's a big ask of the container runtimes, right? To do that work.
Either that, or we say, okay, we don't worry about images pulled by the container runtime. We can just have a Boolean maybe returning back whether it was pulled by the runtime or the kubelet, and do persistence. That will be a minimal thing to do. Yeah.
Yes, like we're doing pinning today, we could add a, who pulled it.
Right.
You pulled it, so it's okay, right? Or we could even do a filter on the image stats list, right? That comes back to only be, only give me, information about the images that are nks.io that I pulled. Then yes, we could have persistence in kubelet if we could figure out how to do that in a way that would be, supportive. And then we also added the additional information above the who pulled it to be whether it was pulled the secret or not, right? Yeah.
The other part of me is trying to think, what if the kubelet did it, is there a useful future audit event we could emit? Yeah, I guess from my opinion, I could see there being some benefit as it is now if I reboot a host, and people might find that practical and get some experience on it. But I guess ultimately I defer to you and Mernal, and if you think it's worth keeping it around or not. Cool. Anything else?
Well, I guess we should probably have a discussion then, Mernal, with Liggett and
yeah, so sounds good. Maybe with Liggett and David, yeah, they had concerns. So.
And maybe John and a couple others, and get. Is there value? Yes. Is there more value in the end game? Yes. I guess the other question would be, Derek, in this group, does this break us from other possible solutions in the future? None come to my mind, but Liggett's point that there may be some expectation that this problem is fixed, that needs to be addressed. That this isn't an end game fix, right?
Yeah, basically, even in alpha, we'd have to enumerate all of the security gotchas in the documentation, and
right.
Yeah, there's obviously a risk with that. Either way, I'll let you all.
All right, thanks.
Figure out how to proceed.
All right, I'll take it up with Derek and Lee. Thanks.
Cool. All right. Were there any items that Sergey did not go over that folks wanted to raise attention to today? If not, or you have one later, please reach out on Slack, I guess. And going to the rest of the items, I guess we talked about Vinay's in-place update already. And then, Bobby, do you want to talk around the add a CPU issue you've been exploring?
Yeah, sure. So basically, it's just kind of update from last week. The context is there is a kind of regression in 122 with part of the pod lifecycle refactoring stuff that basically introduced an issue that when pods are basically when during termination, the kubelet sends a update to the API server, and it sends the update that the pod is terminated, but it's actually not fully terminated yet, and that causes that new pods, when they're scheduled, they might be rejected by the kubelet locally because they don't have enough resources. So we talked about this last week. There was a PR up by Clayton, who is attempting to fix the issue. So I'm kind of working with Clayton on that right now. It's turning out to be kind of complex fix because we kind of want to make a minimal fix because I think we'll need to cherry pick this back all the way to 122, but it requires some kind of deeper changes in pod lifecycle stuff. And so there's kind of discussion if we have enough testing around it and so forth. And I kind of looked at the latest code. I think it makes sense to me that the latest change, basically the latest change, reports to the API server the terminal phase only when it's fully actually terminal, and all the containers are not running anymore. So I think the fix looks good. The only question if like the testing is sufficient and if we have enough coverage and so forth. Like I did another test yesterday. I actually found like a regression, I think, in the PR. I posted it on the GitHub comments just by doing some manual tests. So that's kind of the bigger concern if we just have enough testing. So if anyone wants to take a closer look and has some ideas on other test cases and stuff we should look at, I think that'd be valuable. So that's kind of the update for that issue. So that's that one. And then any questions from that one? I have like slightly related topic I want to go to, but maybe there's some questions on that first.
Yeah, I'm curious, did we close on the discussion of reversing the fix that will cause the regression? Because I agree with your assessment, like if new fix will cause new regression, it may be even worse situation. We will chase bugs all the time.
Yeah. So that's another option, I guess. The issue is, I guess, like these changes are all introduced in kind of a really big PR, the pod lifecycle refactor PR back in 122. Like I think it's almost a year ago at this point. I'm not sure how feasible it is to fully revert it. I guess we haven't really explored that option, but maybe something worth to consider. But
there were
I think the issue.
There were other ill consequences before that.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think the problem is that PR did fix a lot of issues, but I think it introduced some other ones. So it's kind of fix one thing, break another thing type of thing. Yeah. So anyways, that's in progress. And then another issue that I found actually just yesterday, I haven't opened up a GitHub issue, but it's kind of related to actually the pod lifecycle refactor stuff. One of the changes as a result of the pod lifecycle refactoring is that when pods are terminated, for example, by kubelet during eviction or graceful shutdown or any other use cases where kubelet basically manually kills a pod, before pre-122, before the pod lifecycle refactor stuff, the status of the pod and all of the conditions associated with it, like the ready condition and the container status, et cetera, were not actually reported by kubelet. And after 122, after the pod lifecycle refactor, actually that changed, and now kubelet does report container statuses and ready conditions and so forth after pods are terminated. And the problem is kind of reports them in two phases. One is that it puts the pod into a terminal phase, so it changes the phase to like succeeded or failed, and then the second update, it actually updates the conditions. And so there's an issue we found kind of internally where basically the kubelet might not send a second update, for example, if the node is shut down or the node is terminated for whatever reason. So it can basically leave pods in kind of a very weird state where the pod is in terminal phase or failed phase, but the ready condition is still reporting true. And that kind of creates a problem because like Kubernetes services and endpoints and stuff like that use the ready condition to detect if the pod is ready or not. And so this can result in basically traffic being sent to pods that are not actually like ready. So that's kind of an issue. So I'll open up a GitHub issue to talk about this more. I just kind of done about this yesterday.
Just wondering, that's an were you saying that was for graceful shutdown and eviction, or just one of those two paths?
It doesn't really matter. I think the case I was looking at was for graceful shutdown, but it's for any case when the kubelet initiates an eviction, basically, because prior to this, just no conditions, no details were reported, basically, if the pod was in failed phase. So because the update happens in two states, basically, like in 2 steps to the API server, if for whatever reason the second update is not sent, or maybe it's sent, but like basically the first update is sent is just updating the phase, and a lot of other controllers and external things like the service controller, endpoint controller, etc., don't actually look at the phase, they look at the ready condition. So one thought I have here on how to fix this potentially is, you know, if we already know the pod is going to be in terminal phase, right, like failed or succeeded, we should probably not report a ready condition of true, because ready condition is kind of used by, you know, services to detect if they can send traffic, and if we're changing the terminal phase, it means we're already shutting down this pod. So that's one idea, but probably needs a little bit more discussion, I think. So
yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I look forward to the issue.
Cool.
All right. Any other topics that people want to raise today? If not, we can give back a half hour. All right. Well, thanks so much for everyone who participated, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.